What's up, everyone? It is Richie here from the F1 podcast. I'm here with Andrew Cleary. It is October 21st, recording this a couple of days after the United States Grand Prix. Andrew, that is a beautiful hat, my man. I think it was a big news that happened in the city yesterday.
Yes, it was looking bleak for about 7 innings there, and then George Springer put the entire GTA, the six, on his back, carried us to the finish line, and we're going to the World Series. First time since 1993. I wasn't alive then,
I was
so I'm excited. This is uncharted waters.
Mr. Max Verstappen. We've talked about the success that he had on the sprint weekend, and the start of the weekend was a terrible weekend in the sense for McLaren. It didn't really bode well even more for them in the race weekend. So I came with a stat here, Andrew.
Okay.
So Verstappen title odds after the Italian Grand Prix were plus 8,000.
hmm
Now Verstappen odds after the United States Grand Prix are plus 150. And you sent the FanDuel, list, the FanDuel kind of what they had on FanDuel of the predictions. He is pretty much now even with Oscar Piastri, I believe, to win
Yeah.
the title. And and some sports books have favored him sitting 40 points behind Oscar as they enter the final five races. But talk about a master class again from Max Verstappen. And we've talked about this. You've mentioned this in the last week's episode, is these are the tracks that he's comfortable with, and he's proven that he's been successful. He's won Coda multiple times. There was no doubt that we knew that he was gonna, after the success on Saturday, clean race, and you did win. No drivers out first lap there.
I know it was super clean on turn one. I thought it was going to be a couple of accidents going on, but yeah, just another clinical weekend from Max. And when you see, like, especially on the sprint, when both McLarens got taken out, on based on a racing incident, just opened the door a little bit more. And Oscar, overall really didn't have a great weekend to start off with. And then he didn't really have a great qualifying session, which put him on the back pedal the entire Sunday. And that was just another crack in the door opening for Max to be able to get to that point where now he only sits 40 points back of Oscar for the World Drivers' Championship. And with five races left and two sprints remaining, and if there's an opportunity for Max to score 447 points total towards the end of the year, because if he wins all races and sprints, that'll be another 141 points, which would then put him on 447, which then he needs to limit then Oscar to 101 points, Lando to 115. Now, the caveat is that Oscar can technically finish second to Max in every race remaining slash sprint remaining to win the World Drivers' Championship, because that would give him 104 points from there, and he'd win the Drivers' Championship, I believe, by three. But just so much to play for. And again, we're coming up to a stretch where Max has won in Mexico, he's won in Brazil, he's won in Qatar,
And
like
he's
this.
won in Abu
He's
Dhabi.
won in Abu Dhabi, and he's like, this is like a opportunity for him to like honestly I think create like the greatest comeback in all of F1 history, really, from a team that was pretty much down and out at the beginning of the year. Just imagine plus 800 or 8,000. Like that is insane to come to back to be like a favorite from the bookmakers. That like unbelievable.
And maybe just put in perspective, if people that obviously don't know sports betting, let's just look back at maybe more of the stats. Like Piastri had a 109-point lead, and then a 70-point lead for Norris over Verstappen after the Dutch Grand Prix. That has now been shaved in half thanks to the Dutchman's latest surge. While Norris scored a podium in Austin, Piastri's lack of pace on Sunday only converted to fifth in the GP. Tensions are flaring, I would think, in the papaya right now. There's no
Well,
caveat to it, especially with the crash on Saturday.
Stella's doing a very good job of fighting that PR battle in terms of saying that championship's still in her hands, which is very true. They do lead by a good margin of 40 points, and he claims that Norris had the pace to win. But I think the reason why Lord Norris did not have a chance to win was the incredible driving from Charles Leclerc this weekend and the let's as Fred would say, aggressive strategy, not a gamble, to go on the softs at the beginning of the race. And that was huge for Charles, able to get into P2 behind Norris out of the gate and then really force Norris to battle Leclerc on track to the point where Max had a comfortable drive the entire time.
Yeah. So yeah, let's talk about a little bit of Charles Leclerc's strategy. I think impressive qualifying to start with. I think both Ferraris look, benefited from on the Saturday from like obviously the collisions with McLaren's, but also had some promise in it. And we can all kind of conversations at Trinity Common was could this potentially if the McLaren is really going towards or if they're really struggling right now, could this be a potential where could Lewis Hamilton, get a podium? If possible. But yeah, we have to talk about how Charles Leclerc's, was a really redemption drive for him. I was worried about him going on softs for about 26 I think it was like 26 or 27 laps.
Yeah.
But he was able to, put in some really record times and be able to hold off Lando. And we saw some great like, clean battles between both of them and then when he got into the mediums it was like a different story. But like you gotta have sometimes you gotta have trust in your drivers to know what to do and he I think it was a very well deserved podium for while a very difficult season that they're having. And look, they're gonna if people are trying to capitalize on McLaren right now, if they're gonna continue doing this, then I won't say no to a couple more podiums heading our way. And a race win would be nice, but we have to be realistic with when you have Max on the run right now.
Yeah, and that would put you, I think, believe second in the or third in the constructors, just behind Mercedes. So it, I really think it's going to be. This was a kind of a necessary weekend for Ferrari to have. Like, great to see Lewis gain. I think it was his best drive for the entire season, going to P4 right there. He looked very confident in the car. I know that he and Leclerc had a couple on-track battles, uh, which Leclerc ended up winning in that sense. But it was during the weekend. It was just really good to see that they were able to finish P3 and P4, and then have Lewis be able to fend off Piastri towards the end of that race.
Yeah, and I think that is, we know that we've talked about Lewis Hamilton's struggles throughout the year and what he's been going through, and he's been pretty open about it. But like, hopefully, they say I've said this in previous episodes, Rome wasn't built in one day. It's going to take some time for him to understand the car and, new regulations next year. So hopefully that, brings some provision. Um, I also want to talk about a certain driver I think maybe is not getting enough recognition. And I think he's been kind of pretty quiet, but we did talk about a little bit about him. But would you say it was another good weekend for Yuki Tsunoda? Because he's kind of saving himself with another points finish.
Yeah, another points finish, had a great points finish in the sprint there on Saturday. So being able to, it was tough qualifying session for him getting knocked out in Q2, but being able to have like a resurgence drive into P7 again, get 6 points for the team, really important for Yuki to build his confidence in that second seat. Overall, it's kind of where Perez was doing last season. Not great qualifying, but was able to convert um, those unfortunate, starts to a points finish, nevertheless. But it, you'd hope you'd want to see more from him, but I just don't think with the car that it's tuned up right now, it's really is just Max's setup that's going to be crucial every weekend going forward for Red Bull. And Yuki's going to have to make that sacrifice, unfortunately, in that sense.
Well, yeah, I know they're still fighting for the three seats, and I think Helmut Marko have it announced or was asked by the interview of what the decision on the second seat, and he says after Mexico they're going to make that announcement. So, you know, as we kind of go into the Mexican Grand Prix this weekend, like that will probably be very critical for Yuki, for Isaac Hajar, and then for Liam Lawson is to really,
Yeah.
this is honestly, this is the make or break weekend, and this will determine their future in Formula One next year, and hopefully years beyond.
Because part of, if Max is able to come back, part of what you want as a Red Bull fan is Yuki to be able to be up with Max to give him some form of defense as well, right? Not only in a position spot where they can maybe he can overtake some points
Hmm.
with Piastri or Norris, right, to help gain, to close that gap for Max, but also just to defend him in the race overall. Problem is, though, Yuki just does not have the qualifying form right now that he needs to be in order to get to that position. So it really is every weekend for him. It's going to be fighting, his Saturday with a recovery or performance on Sunday in that sense.
Yeah. How did you foresee Mercedes this weekend? Is it safe to say they didn't? Well, they probably didn't have the greatest of weekends. I think Kimi Antonelli's spin didn't really help the case for them. Him
Yeah.
dropping from seven to I think it was 13, and then Oscar, not Oscar, George Russell, P4 to P6.
Well, the frustrating part is like Georgia was consistent. I'd say like I think P6 was the max for Mercedes this week. I think Ferrari, McLaren were too fast. And then obviously Max being too fast at Red Bull over George. In that sense, like to me, P6 was the ceiling for George this weekend during the Grand Prix. I, Antonelli had a really tough, like he did have the fastest lap in the Grand Prix, but he just couldn't recover, but getting clipped by or clipping signs there, which kind of caught it in lip on lap nine there or lap eight, which created damage then for Sainz to be knocked out of the race. Dropped Antonelli all the way down, right, having to pit. So despite the like flashes of brilliance in terms of speed, it's just he was not able to score points this weekend. And when you take a look at it, like that incident, part of me is like, you have to kind of take a look in your mirrors if you're Kimmy and you know that science is right there. Like, I understand science has to kind of back out a little bit with the corner, but he just turned right in on him in that sense.
Yeah, it doesn't really help. Like we talk about like these not mental lapses, but geez, these like, clearly he's still learning his season in F1 and he's, I think, 18, 19 years old. Like mistakes are going to happen, but obviously, when it comes to longevity, um, it's not the destructors trophy that they're chasing. They are chasing the constructors. They're chasing the drivers'
Yeah.
trophies. These mistakes do really add up, and we've talked about like look at the McLarens as these little collisions of unfortunately have made the season
Well,
towards the
and
end closer now. Go ahead. Sorry.
well, I'd say, and it's like I'm watching the replay of the accident, and it's like it's tough to gauge because Sainz gets a five place grid penalty in Mexico for an accident that's like, yeah, it should be avoided, I think, but it's like it's so close to call. I think it's like a bit of a racing incident in that respect, where it's like, yes, he's trying to go on the inside and make a diving move, but then also Kimi turns pretty abruptly into the corner. So it's like,
Hmm.
is it really worth the five place grid penalty for Sainz in that sense this weekend? I don't know. I don't think it is.
Yeah, exactly. Like I think I don't know. I heard some like confusion on some of these on continuing on when it comes to like these penalties again. I mean, a lot of people had their feelings, but towards this, I'm just putting my hands up. It's just one of those. Turning over to other drivers, anything else stood out you for this weekend? I mean, I will
I
just.
thought the Alpine situation was ridiculous.
Oh yes, I forgot what like Why are they arguing over P16, P17?
Well, why are you holding positions so late? Like, let them race. Who cares? Like, if I'm Franco, I'm not listening. I applaud him for not listening to any team message at that point because he is fighting for his F1 life. And when you're told to hold positions for P17, like who cares?
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't blame him going after Pierre and, having a little on-track battle because at the end of the day, you're not scoring any points. So let them race in the back. Who cares?
No, that's probably one car I would not want to be in going into next year. I don't really have the confidence. And I mean, at least are they going with Mercedes engine next year, or are they sticking? Yeah,
No,
I think
yeah,
they.
they definitely go on Mercedes engine next year.
Okay, well, that's where maybe some stories go. So talking about next year, unless is there anything else that we want to segue from the United States Grand Prix? I don't know about you, but Andrew, I'm really looking forward to these next couple of races, and I think we're gonna have another viewing party. Please stay tuned on social media. That was a honestly amazing turnout at Trinity Common on a day that the weather was very not predictable where it started to rain really, really hard. I'm glad that the bar was packed, and obviously we saw a really good race and fans for throughout. So yeah, make sure tune in to our social media. We'll provide updates of the next event. Um, Segueing to some other news, we did talk about Apple TV. We did talk about the Mercedes signing, the re-signing their drivers. We talked about Colton Herta coming in as a reserve driver on for Cadillac. He has secured his 2026 F2 deal with High Tech. He will make the switch from IndyCar to Formula 2 next season with the American confirmed to race for High Tech in 2026. And for those that don't know, he needed to make his move if he wants to come into Formula 1 that he needed to for his license is to race in an F2 car. So glad to hear that he's got a place for 2026.
I think this is the Cadillac long-term project, in my opinion. We're going to have Valtteri, we're going to have Sergio kind of bring this team into the sport, but then Herta is going to be the one that, leads this team come 3 to 5 years down the road, in my opinion. This is um, very smart on Cadillac's position wise. Colton Herta has done very well in IndyCar, and now this will give him a chance to build confidence in the Formula Series in F2 while kind of having to me he's got that guaranteed position for the future in F1 as a result now. So he's going to be able to learn a lot for these next couple of years now with a great this is really good for Colton overall.
And I think just to bounce on that, I think, Colton has proven himself in IndyCar. Seeing him win in Toronto and, he had pretty good qualifying and good race. I think this year, I'm just trying to forget where he finished, but I know last year he won it. Um, where if you have to talk about that second seat, just like I know we're thinking years and years away, who do you think could potentially come into that second seat to be next to Colton Herta if both Sergio and Valtteri end up retiring?
I would love to see Alex pull out, to be honest with you.
He's proven himself, and maybe he wants to
But he's
probably.
won so much in IndyCar that now it's time to kind of like prove yourself up in the Formula Series too, right? So I would love to see Palau and Herta be teammates in Cadillac in the next couple of years.
Do you think it would be even possible?
Nothing's ever impossible in this sport. I mean, Sergio Perez came back after the whole turmoil of Red Bull. Anything is possible in the Formula One, Formula Two. I just think it would be because we're never seeing that transition from IndyCar to F1. It's always been, haven't done well in
F1
F1 to
down to
make that
IndyCar,
transition
yeah.
to IndyCar. It would be cool to see the reverse flip in that sense. So that's why I'm hoping that maybe likes of Alex Palau can get into the Formula One and then stick it to Zach Brown a little bit at McLaren there with that kind of crapshoot that was a few years ago.
Oh, that'd be so great. Yeah. Anyway, so lots of kind of segues into the Mexican Grand Prix this weekend. I know it's going to be probably another hot race weekend. It is a great track to kind of see some racing. I really love that stadium, the baseball stadium within towards the final turns. I'm really excited and
I
I
think
would
this is another Max win this weekend. I really don't see how he can. It's going to take like a really impressive performance from McLaren to not beat Max here. Max is just on another level right now, and I know he's got to pretty much run the table. But if there's anybody that can run the table in a Formula One, it's Max Verstappen.
Oh, that's music to Tyler Hathrall's ears. Let's just say that. Leading off on that, please tune into our social media accounts. We'll have updates in terms of where we're going to be watching the race this Sunday, whether if it's in the East End or West End. My name is Ricci. This is Andrew. Thank you so much for coming on, Andrew. And I know big day for our Toronto Blue Jays yesterday. Really excited for Game One this Friday. I know this is a Formula One podcast, but we gotta pump out. We gotta promote the local team here. Make sure to tune us on our social media channels. And Andrew, is there anything final that I should end this week's episode off with?
I will say though that Oscar Piastri has not had a good track record in Mexico. I think he's only finished like P8 highest. So if he finishes P8 and Max finishes P1, it's really game on.